Hi there everybody, my name is Róisín Ní Ghallóglaigh. I'm a singer and a songwriter, and I'm here today to talk to you about a new song that I've written called Bóinn The River Goddess. This song came about as part of a project called the Songs for Our Children project. And the idea of this project is that we wanted to write new songs for children that were written in a traditional style and sung unaccompanied, as songs are sung in traditional Irish music. I was asked to write a song from a Meath perspective, a song about Meath, because I'm from Meath originally. I grew up in Kilberry, which is just outside Navan. So my aim was to write about the River Boyne, because it's such a big and important feature of Meath. And I wanted to write about its history, its mythology, the geography of the river, and most importantly, the environmental importance of our rivers and how important it is to take care of them and appreciate them. Some of the reasons for this were, when I thought about our rivers, rivers are often neglected, polluted, taken for granted, even though they're so important to our environment, to our countryside, our wildlife, our biodiversity. Also, the River Boyne has a really rich and interesting history and mythology, which I'm going to tell you all about. And I think that not everybody knows about this or celebrates it. So one of the good ways to do that is to put it into a song. The Boyne is such an integral part of the geography of Meath, as it runs the whole way through Meath. And we're going to have a look at that shortly on the map of Meath. And the river plays a really important role in the biodiversity and the environmental health of our natural landscape. So let's start with the story about the Boyne and how the Boyne got its name. So the River Boyne starts out in County Kildare, in a place called Carbery. In Carbery there's a small well. Today it's called Trinity Well, but a long time ago it was known as the Well of Seggish. At the Well of Seggish, or near it, there's a big castle, and it's on a hill called She Knockton, and it means the fairy hill of Knockton. And if you were to go there today, you'd see old ruins of a castle, and just down the road is the source of the Boyne. Bóinn was a fairy goddess, and she was married to a king called Necton, and they lived at the castle at Carbery on She Necton. He forbade her to go near the well. She must have known that the water would only bring good to the earth, and so she set about to release it. Now the well was guarded by the king's servants, so she waited until they went away, and she knew how to unlock the magic of the well. So she knew that to do that, she needed to go around the well anti-clockwise 3 times, and then the waters would be released. Once the waters were released from the well, she was consumed and became one with the water of the well, and then flowed all the way from Carbery, through Edenderry, onwards to Clonard, and made her way across Meath and eventually out to the sea at Mornington and Bettystown. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as I go through the verses of the song. Now, the myth of Bóinn also tells us that she has 2 spirit animals. They're the white swan and the white cow. And that white cow is reflected in her name, the fair cow, Bóinn. So the first thing I wanted to do when I was writing this song, I knew it was going to be about the Boyne. And I knew already that the Boyne had this wonderful creation myth or story or history behind it that I could write about in the song. But I also wanted to connect it to why the river is important to us today. And if you can imagine what Meath would be like without the Boyne, it would be a very different place, because the Boyne is what gives us our rich land, the good soil, all of the nature, the birds, the wildlife, everything that we have in Meath is really there because the river replenishes the earth. And anywhere in the world that we have seen where rivers disappear, you see drought and you see people hungry, because we need our rivers to sustain our environment and to sustain the agricultural economy of the place that we live in, so that we can eat, so that we can fish. I also wanted to include the geography of the River Boyne. I wanted to talk about where is its source, where does it start, how it crosses the county boundaries from Kildare into Meath, how it serviced so many needs in the past and now for work and for agriculture all along its way. You had, as I said, rich lands. It was used for transport, as is obvious from the longboats that were just spotted in the River Boyne near Drogheda. Industry, so mills used to be powered by the waters of the Boyne, and then they would go on to make flour, and that flour would go on to make bread, and so people could eat. So hugely, hugely important to our survival, the River Boyne has been in the past and continues to and will be on into the future. I wanted to talk about the direction of the river. What way did it flow? How did it make its way from all the way inland in Carbery, all the way out to the sea at Mornington and Bettystown? One of the ways I did that was by using a map to plan the journey. To write a song, it's always good to have a little bit of a background story, that you know what you're going to fill in your song. You also need to think about the timing of it, the rhythm, the rhyming. But you also really need to use your imagination, because you have this story and you need to put that into a kind of a way that will come across musically and poetically. So you're thinking about an awful lot of things when you're trying to write a song. But generally, they all come together if you kind of have a good place to start from. And what better place to start from than the myth of the Boyne? So when I started to think about the first verse and how I might write that, first of all, I thought, well, I'm going to tell this story, so I need to tell people when it happened. So my very first line was long, long ago, when our fields were dry. Of course, the fields must have been dry before the River Boyne was released from its magic well. And because the rivers were dry, no seeds could grow there. And as a result of no seeds being able to grow there, people couldn't eat. So people must have been quite hungry and in fear of what the future had held for them. So in my imagination, I imagined that Bóinn, the goddess, changed into water and became the river because she wanted to quell their hunger. And she wanted to put back the richness of water into the soil so that people could survive. And that's where I got my first verse from. In the second verse, we tell the story about how she released the waters from the well. And you remember from the mythology, the stories that have been told for hundreds and hundreds of years in Ireland, it tells us that she had to walk around the well 3 times anti-clockwise in order to make it happen. The hazel tree is included in the second verse because it also appears symbolically in many forms of the myth of Boyne and the creation of the Boyne. And it's because of the fruits that it gives. And those fruits she carried with her to plant through the land and sustain people. Boyne is also depicted in the mythology and the stories going back hundreds of years of having a very large dog or a hound at her side at all times. And the story tells us that while she waited for the waters to come bubbling up out of the magic well, her dog waited there with her. And the two of them both were consumed and turned into the River Boyne, and they both made their way out to the sea. In the third verse, I wanted to talk about the geography of the river and where the river starts to flow from, and to give my listeners a kind of an idea of the direction that the river flows in. Okay? So that we could start to see her journey. As soon as she leaves the magic well, where did she go? So the first place is Carbery, and then she goes through Edenderry and eventually crosses the border into Meath, between Meath and Kildare, from Edenderry over to Clonard, which is in Meath. And I said then that it left after her, as she moved her way through Meath, she enriched the land with her water. So she made the richest plains or lands. And then what happens once the plains are enriched? You can grow things and people were able to then feed themselves, and so were happy. Because she was a fairy princess, she would have had the most beautiful jewellery when she was in her human form. But once she took on the form of the water, she discarded all of those earthly belongings, and her jewels were gifted to the poets her beauty gifted to the artists, and her knowledge gifted to the Druids. These are people that you'll find all throughout the history of Meath as being celebrated. The artists, the poets, the Druids. Okay, so verse 4 then tells us about the trajectory or the way that the Boyne flows. So you have first east, then west, then east again, and she flows towards Board's Mill. And then on out the way to Trim. And anyone that's been to Trim knows that the Boyne is very, very beautiful and splendourous at Trim, and it flows by Trim Castle and the Abbey at Trim. And very often, as I've driven past that part of Trim, you'll see the White Swan floating by, particularly near the Abbey in Trim. Verse 5 tells us about how she moved then from Trim out towards Scurlockstown and then on to Bective, where she powered homes and mills. As I mentioned, she would have done this the whole way, all along the River Boyne, would have powered homes and mills. She then travelled northeast in the shadow of Tara's hills. So she kind of moved her way behind the hill of Tara and then on down into Navan. And anybody that knows that little drive down from the hill of Tara into Navan, they'll know that the Boyne is really beautiful there. You've got lovely little waterfalls, and it gets really, really strong as it flows into Navan. Now, once it gets into Navan, it meets up with the River Blackwater. So anyone that knows Navan will know that at Flower Hill, the bridge at Flower Hill, on one side of it you have the River Blackwater, and the other side of it you have the River Boyne. And that's called the confluence of the river, whereas one river meets up with another. The Boyne then flows from there out to Slane. In the verse about Navan, I wrote that she weaved and danced towards Navan, where through the caves she goes. Now, I don't know really if there's any caves in Navan and if the River Boyne really flows through any caves, but the name Navan in Irish is An Uav, and An Uav means the cave. So I decided to imagine that the Boyne River flows through little caves in Navan as she makes her way out towards Slane. The next verse tells us that she swooped through Slane and turned south again, her sacred cow in tow. We've already mentioned that one of the spirit animals of the Boyne, or of Boyne, was the fair cow or the white cow. So I wrote about the white cow as her sacred cow, which she left to graze at Rossnaree, which is just near Newgrange in the Boyne Valley, just past Slane, because everybody knows that some of the best land in Meath, of course, is in the Boyne Valley, and that's where the finest grasses would have grown. From Douth and Nouth and on to Drogheda before she reached the sea. So we know that in the Boyne Valley we have Douth Passagegrave, we have in the middle Newgrange Passagegrave, and over here we have Nouth. Now, mythology actually tells us that Bowen used to live for a little while at Newgrange. And the Boyne was a very, very special feature for anybody that lived in this area a long, long time ago, and still is to this day. The Boyne then flows from there to Drogheda, through Drogheda, makes its way out to Mornington. At Mornington, it reaches the sea, and at Bettystown, you'll see that's where the Irish Sea is, and that's where the Boyne has flowed out into the sea. In the last verse, I just wanted to bring home how important the River Boyne is, and how the story of the Boyne stays alive and has stayed alive for hundreds and hundreds of years and generations of people in Meath and further afield. The rich plains of Meath are made fertile by the River Boyne. It's thanks to the River Boyne that we have the good land that we have in Meath. Without it, it would be a different place. The River Boyne gave us life, gifted us life, food, sustenance, transport, energy, such an important feature of our lives today and the lives of people in the past in Meath. And that it's very important that we remember that gift as a legacy and that we continue to look after the Boyne River and all our rivers and protect them and appreciate them.
Hi everybody, my name is Sarah.
And my name is Manuela. Today we're gonna show you the behind the scene of making the video for Bóinn The River Goddess. Sarah, so tell me, how did you start?
So I started with the sketchbook and the song.
Long, long ago when our fields were dry.
I listened to the song many times and thought about the verses and breaking down, thinking of the structure of the song and where the journey of the river was going to. So I looked at images of the places along the way, and it was all new to me because I don't know that part of Ireland. So it was a really lovely discovery, like finding out about this area and this place, which is so rich in history, and it was fascinating. So I really enjoyed the research and looking at the sacred sites and the beautiful megalithic artworks. And I spent a long time looking into all these things, realizing that the theme that kept coming up for me in this was the spiral, the direction of the river from, when the water starts to come, it starts with a spiral. And then looking at all these artworks of the megalithic stonework and all these spirals that come back again and again. So these shapes were really important to how the form of this piece was going to be. And then the character was the next thing. What was she going to be like? Who was she, and what type of style was she going to have? And then I really like the carvings of ship figureheads on ships, and they're very simple, kind of bold, leading out, heading into the water, heading into the waves, kind of pioneering ahead. And I was thinking, yes, that's what she's doing. Bowen is leading the river. She's taking us on this journey. And so I thought the style of her would be taken from that sort of imagery. And so incorporating, bringing together the form of the spiral and this simplified kind of bold figure heading forward. Thinking about cows, then I drew from photographs of cows to just get different poses and different angles for the animation. Same with swans, getting some just different views, thinking about how they would move. This has all come unstuck, but then this is thinking about storyboards, beginnings of storyboards, and what might be happening. So the beginning idea of a book opening, which is Manuela's lovely idea, and then thinking about the people who are, the land is dry, everything's brown, people are hungry. This is before the river has kind of given fertility to the ground, to the land and the people. So everything starts off from this place. And then the spiral starts to come and the movement starts to come, and Bowen is born into the landscape, and then things start to happen. So more pages, workings out, funny stick people, playing with text and enjoying the idea of how maybe the letters could be almost like signs on the map. And thinking like the N becomes almost like a bridge or a tunnel. When a B is turned on its side, it becomes like hills and references the sacred sites. Didn't really use this that much in it, but kind of like that idea. Stop motion using paper cutting seemed to be a good way of telling the story and illustrating our ideas. And it was fun to play with the shapes of Bowen and the transformation of her from her human form to the cow to the swan. And I tried to storyboard the whole piece, but a lot of the things couldn't be worked out just in a drawing, or they had to be done by playing with the bits of paper and moving them around and seeing what happened. So those scenes through the stop motion came about through just playing with shapes and then realizing like, oh wow, this can happen. And it's just a really magical way of making pictures and stories come to life, and you can combine all these different things, drawing, cutouts, places. It's great.
Stop motion animation is a process of taking lots of different pictures and putting them one after the other in order to create movement. So this is the same as for film. You know, when you're filming something, it's you're taking lots of pictures that are following one after the other very quickly, and this is an optical illusion for the eye. It looks like something is moving. So in the same way, with the stop motion animation, you take a series of pictures and you move something between one picture and the other, and then when you play them back together, it looks like these elements are moving. So this was our setup for the stop motion animation. We had the camera up here and then filming and take pictures of what the camera saw here, and then the computer with the software specific for stop motion recorded all the pictures one after the other.
And how did you put the videos onto the animation? How did you do that?
Yeah, so we see that this is green. Okay, so the areas that are green, you can do something which is called chroma keying, which means keying out the chroma, which is the Greek word, I think, for color. And it means that you tell the software to remove one specific color. So in this case, we removed the green from the background of the book, for example, and then we used another background. Or for some other images, we removed the blue of the cutout of the river, and we made, or the spirals, for example, and we made this transparent, and then we added a video below.
I really enjoyed working on this project. It was great to be inspired by different things, the music and the lyrics of the song. They really helped to create a sense of the character, and then the drawings, the next level, the drawings and all the kind of the background of the stories and the mythical places. It was great to be able, with technical knowledge, to actually bring the drawings and the lyrics to life.
I really enjoyed working on this project too. It's been very rich and interesting. I've learnt a lot, and it's great working together in a collaboration like this. So each person has their own set of skills that they bring, and it's great working with Manuela because I think we have different skills that really work well together, and it's wonderful having this beautiful song to work from and bring to life. So we're very excited to bring this project to you, and we hope you enjoy it.